She had built her life around precision and control. Boardrooms, business trips, late-night calls, every move carefully calculated, every challenge anticipated. Success, she had learned early, was about preparation and composure. She thrived on it. Her colleagues admired her, her clients respected her, and she had earned every accolade with relentless determination. Yet nothing in her experience, no matter how meticulously planned, prepared her for this flight. The airplane cabin was humming with routine. The soft whir of air conditioning, the occasional click of a seatbelt, the distant murmur of children. Walking down the aisle, briefcase in hand, she noticed a subtle shift in the air, an unusual weight that made her pause, just for a heartbeat. Her eyes scanned the rows, and she felt them, those lingering stares, the subtle glances exchanged between passengers. Whispers floated around her like unseen currents. She shook her head, telling herself it was nothing, just nerves, just travel stress. But deep inside, she sensed something was about to shatter the perfect order she had worked so hard to master. Sliding into her assigned seat, she allowed herself a small sigh of relief. Finally, a pause. A chance to catch up on emails before takeoff, to lose herself in the familiar rhythm of schedules and spreadsheets. She placed her briefcase under the seat, adjusted her posture, and reached for her laptop. The world outside the window blurred as she focused inward. Then a shadow fell across her. He stood there, smirking, eyes sharp and assessing. "You're in my seat," he said, voice carrying an edge that made her stomach tighten. She lifted her boarding pass, hoping for a mistake, but the numbers matched. Her seat, his seat. He did not move. The entitlement in his gaze was unmistakable, a silent claim that the world revolved around him. Around them, tension began to coil, subtle at first, then spreading like an electric charge. Whispers turned into glances, glances into stares. The air seemed heavier, charged with unspoken judgment and expectation. She realized, even before anyone spoke, that this confrontation wasn't about a seat, it was about power. She tried to stay calm. Flight attendants approached, their voices measured, but the man's insistence grew louder. Every word he uttered felt like a challenge, a test of her composure. Cameras discreetly lifted from pockets, phones recorded. Passengers sensed the injustice building, the air thick with anticipation. Every second felt stretched, elongated, as if time itself were holding its breath. She reflected, internally, on the countless times she had faced bias before, in boardrooms where ideas were dismissed, in meetings where her voice had been drowned out, in hallways where her achievements were quietly undermined. But this was different. Confined in a narrow aisle, trapped in the scrutiny of dozens of strangers, it was personal, immediate, inescapable. Her thoughts raced. Stay calm. Do not give him the satisfaction. Document everything. Control what you can control. She drew in a slow, deliberate breath. Her hand rested lightly on her briefcase, not in defense, but as a silent anchor. Around her, the cabin seemed to pulse with energy. The murmurs of passengers, once distant, now felt like a tide, rising and cresting, ready to break. Minutes passed. The confrontation escalated. His voice grew sharper, more insistent, but she remained composed. Eyes met eyes. Every gesture, every flicker of expression became loaded with meaning. Cameras lifted, phones recorded. Passengers sensed the injustice building, the air thick with anticipation. Every second felt stretched, elongated, as if time itself were holding its breath. Then came the announcement. "Attention passengers, we need to deplane immediately. Ground control has instructed a temporary hold due to an incident on board." The cabin erupted in murmurs. Tension rippled outward, touching every corner, every person. He faltered just slightly as the reality of attention, observation, and accountability began to press against him. Crew guided the passengers off, their voices steady, professional, but firm. She stepped onto the jet bridge, feeling the solid ground beneath her feet like a balm. Relief mingled with indignation, and she allowed herself a slow exhale. She walked through the airport concourse, observing the reactions of others, some sympathetic, some curious, some oblivious. Cameras had captured more than conflict. They had captured truth. The truth of entitlement, of prejudice, of the everyday indignities that countless black professionals endure. And she thought of all those who had come before her, who had navigated boardrooms, offices, and streets filled with invisible barriers. She thought of the quiet resilience required to hold one's head high when the world seems determined to knock it down. In that moment, stepping into the fluorescent light of the terminal, she realized something. Dignity was her weapon. Calm, composure, the refusal to be diminished, these were the forces that could not be stolen, even if they tried. Around her, passengers whispered, recording, processing. They had witnessed not just a conflict, but a microcosm of systemic inequality, replayed countless times in spaces large and small, from airports to workplaces, from schools to streets. Her mind turned inward again. How long before these patterns are recognized? How long before entitlement, prejudice, and systemic bias are confronted with accountability? She did not yet have the answer. But the story, her story, and the countless others like it, would not be silenced. Later, when the news would circulate, when social media posts and recordings began to surface, she knew one thing for certain. This was not just about her. It was about shining a light on the quiet struggles faced daily by people who are too often forced to defend the simple right to exist without diminishment. It was about the courage required to stand tall when the world seems determined to make you small. And as she walked toward the exit, briefcase in hand, posture impeccable, a new determination settled within her. She had survived the storm in the aisle, yes, but now she carried with her a larger truth. She carried the story forward, ready to inspire, to challenge, to reveal the patterns of bias that too often go unnoticed. Cameras had captured her composure. The world would witness her resilience. Because dignity, she realized, was not conditional. It was inherent. It could not be stolen, even in the face of arrogance, entitlement, or prejudice. And perhaps one day, the world would recognize that too. Until then, she would continue, with grace, with strength, with an unbreakable resolve to face the storms that came her way, armed not just with her skills, but with the power of truth.